Welcome, friends, to this episode of the Weekly Word. Father Ed S. Stock here.
Brother Dominic.
And we are contemplating, is it the 32nd week of the year, Sunday of the year? And we have a rather famous gospel story called The Widow's Mite. And we are also celebrating our annual St. Albert the Great feast day. So we're hoping to celebrate all those who are ministers in our church and, of course, the great community of St. Albert on this occasion. We're having November Festa on Saturday night, so if you are listening to this early in the week and you don't have your tickets yet, it's time to set up the reservation. So we're thinking about these two widows. There's a widow of Zarephath in the first reading, and the prophet Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the widow in the temple with Jesus in the contribution basket there, box. And Jesus is making an observation about that widow. And so the church is giving us these two widows. And so before we talk about how much your weekly contribution to the parish is, not really, because you could see from this gospel story that a pastor might be interested in in how much of your resources you are sharing. That's not what we're thinking about. What we're thinking about, well, one of the things we're thinking about is both of these widows stand as a symbol, at least to me, of those who have died themselves to the hope that the world was going to give them life. So they have died, in a sense, to the promises of the world to give them life. You know, they both have nothing, and they are both willing, nonetheless, to give the little they have, in a sense, to accomplish the will of God. So that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and really, at the end of the day, it's about giving our whole lives. You know, and clearly that poor widow gave everything she had. And the widow in the first reading as well said that her dilemma was that there was a famine. She only had a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, and despite her lack, Elijah said, "Don't worry, God will take care of you." And because she trusted in God and didn't cling on to the few resources she had, she fed the prophet. She gave everything she had, and God miraculously provided for her what she needed. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, that's how God works. Whether it is clearly miraculous, or more oftentimes it is, might seem circumstantial, but the Lord provides. But it's only when we choose to do what God is asking us and we commit to it. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a lot of ways, that's what we need to figure out. How are we holding back, and how do we give everything to the last penny? And also, our second reading talks about, it's from Hebrews, talking about Jesus as the priest who gave his whole life. And because Jesus gave everything, we have everything. And so if we don't act like Jesus, giving our whole lives, then we can't receive from Jesus, his life. Mm-hmm. And
I was thinking of using this, so you let me know what you think. To ask the congregation to imagine that they are at their own funeral, or maybe at the funeral home, with all of their people are standing around, and they are going to make an address. Or maybe somebody's going to stand up and say something about them. And the prompt that I would give them is, old Ed here, that would be me, old Ed here literally spent his life, boom. What would your friends and your neighbors and your relatives be likely to say you spent your whole life on? You know, because that's kind of what the widows are showing us, is that she gave not from her resource or her surplus, but she gave from everything that she had to live on. So there's a symbol of it. It's both of these widows are giving the last bit of possession that they have, because they've decided that God's will is, well, that's not going to save them anyway. They finally maybe have come to the conclusion, well, I'm dying anyway. You know, this is the last I have. So, you know, what's going to extend my life another day? So maybe they were finally free enough to trust God. And so that's what I'm wondering. Boy, I hope somebody, so if any of you are standing around when I'm laying in the middle of the church, I'm hoping, in my casket, I hope somebody will stand up and say that old Father Ed here spent his life welcoming people into communion with God. That's what I'd like people to say. Now, if nobody's thought of that when I'm dead, go ahead and say it anyway, and I'll forgive you. But I wonder, what would you hope that people would say that you spent your whole life on when it came to an end? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I think the big thing is it's about having an undivided heart, spending our whole life, you know, to welcome people, to serve people, and you know, whatever the Lord is calling us to teach people in service. And but it is when we're divided that, you know, that can cause some trouble. So I was talking to a lady, and she said, you know, I'm doing everything fine, but there's this one person who's the thorn on my side, you know, the worst person I could ever imagine, and he's ruining my life. And I said, well, you can't control him, but you can control you, and so you need to forgive him. And she said, no, I'm not able to because he's such a bad person.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, but she's clinging on to unforgiveness, and just like that widow, she needs to give that to the Lord.
Yeah.
And her divided heart is really causing that turmoil.
You know, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So something like that. She has this hurt and maybe resentment. And when you think about it, she's kind of like the widow of Zarephath, but she doesn't see it. You know, what you have there is enough for one last morsel before you die. So stop clinging to it like it's your only hope in the world. That's, because that's nothing. When you think of it, that's so empty. And so much of our lives, mine too, is wrapped up in this stuff that it couldn't extend our life. What does Jesus say? Which one of you, by worrying, could extend your life one hand's worth, one cubit? So it's a powerful thing. What are we relying upon to give us life? And it's kind of an inside out t-shirt, but somebody who's saying, I cannot forgive them, and it's become the whole obsession of their life. And he's like, I wonder what would happen to them if they would go ahead and give it away. Well, who would they have to complain about? Maybe, so it's a fascinating, and it's a fundamental Christian doctrine. If you want to have life, you have to be willing to die. If you want to follow me, you have to lay down your life and follow me. You give up everything you have and follow me. So, it's we are deluded into what we think is going to give us life. And unfortunately, many of us, we have to wait until the doctor says, well, you're dying. And then we have to realize, holy God, well, what did I spend my life on? And where did it get me now? Well, I think many of us, I have funerals all the time. I say, well, what would you say? Father, faith and family was everything to him. So there it is. I spent my whole life on my faith and my family. I think that would be a good thing to have somebody say about any of us. Eh? All right.
Let's do it.
Peace. Happy Feast of St. Albert.
Yeah.
Let's party. Take care.
Smiling.